The discovery came at dawn when Zara ventured outside to gather rainwater. Human voices echoed through the ruins, and she pressed herself against a broken wall to listen. "Search every building," commanded a familiar voice. Lieutenant Torres. Her former colleague, now leader of the human resistance. "Someone has been taking supplies from the abandoned sectors. If there are survivors, we need to find them." Zara's blood turned cold. The resistance had found their trail. She crept back to the garden where Keth waited, his amber eyes alert to her distress. "We have to leave," she whispered urgently. "They are searching the area." But before they could gather their supplies, another sound froze them both, the distinctive hum of Valdris hover scouts. Through a crack in the ceiling, Zara glimpsed the sleek crafts circling overhead. Keth's expression hardened. "My commanders noticed my absence. They hunt for me as well." They were trapped between two armies, both of which would consider their alliance an unforgivable betrayal. Working quickly, Zara filled her pack with seeds and portable equipment, while Keth gathered weapons from his gear. "There is an old mining tunnel system in the eastern sector," Zara said. "We can use it to reach the spaceport." As they prepared to leave, Keth caught her arm gently. "Zara, once we go, there will be no return. You understand this? We will both be outcasts, hunted by our own people." She looked at him, seeing not the alien conqueror she had feared, but the brave soul who had chosen to trust her with his people's survival. "I understand, but some things are worth the risk." They emerged from the hidden garden into a world transformed by danger. Smoke rose from distant fires where search teams combed through the ruins. The morning air crackled with tension and the sound of approaching engines. Moving through the shadows, they navigated collapsed streets and bombed-out buildings. Zara led the way, using her knowledge of the colony's layout, while Keth watched for threats with a warrior's trained eyes. When human voices grew too close, they pressed themselves into the ruins of an old school. Zara could hear Torres speaking to his team just meters away. "Dr. Zara was one of our best botanists," Torres said. "If she survived, she might have preserved plant samples. Find her, and we find hope for rebuilding." The irony was not lost on Zara. Her own people hunted her while she carried exactly what they sought most desperately. As they waited in hiding, Keth moved closer to her in the cramped space. His presence was warm and reassuring, and she found herself leaning into him unconsciously. When he noticed her trembling, he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "You are afraid," he observed softly. "Terrified," she admitted. "I have never been hunted before." His arm tightened protectively around her. "I will not let them harm you. This, I promise." The sincerity in his voice made her heart skip. She looked up into his amber eyes and saw devotion there, something deeper than mere alliance or gratitude. When he gently touched her cheek with his fingertips, she did not pull away. "Zara," he whispered, his voice husky with emotion. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility and danger. Then human footsteps passed dangerously close, and they were reminded of their perilous situation. That night, as they sheltered in an abandoned freight station, exhaustion finally overcame them. They had walked for hours through treacherous terrain, always listening for pursuit, always ready to run. Zara had set up a small camp in the corner, using salvaged materials to create some privacy. When a fierce storm struck, lightning illuminating the sky and rain pounding the damaged roof, Keth moved closer to share his body heat. "The storm will hide our thermal signatures," he said practically. But his eyes held a different kind of warmth. As thunder crashed overhead, they found themselves drawn together by more than just the need for warmth. Keth's hand found hers in the darkness, and she did not resist when he pulled her closer. Their first kiss was tentative, questioning. But when she responded with equal fervor, it became something passionate and desperate. "This is dangerous," she whispered against his lips. "Everything about us is dangerous," he replied, his voice rough with desire. "But I cannot regret it." In the storm-lashed ruins of a dying world, love bloomed between two souls who had every reason to remain enemies, carrying with them the seeds of hope for both their peoples. The breaking point, 3 days of running, had brought them to the edge of the old spaceport district. But their luck finally ran out at dawn. Zara woke to the sound of Valdris engines directly overhead and Keth's urgent whisper, "They have found us, my former unit." Through the broken walls of their shelter, she could see Valdris soldiers in full combat armor surrounding the building. At their head stood a massive warrior whose bearing spoke of command authority. "That is Commander Vrex," Keth said, his voice tight with old fear. "My former leader? He will not accept my defection." Before they could escape, the commander's voice boomed through a translator device. "Keth, of the 7th Assault Wing, you will surrender yourself and the human female immediately. Your crimes against the Valdris Empire will be judged." Keth stepped protectively in front of Zara, his weapon ready. "I will not let them take you," he said quietly. But Zara saw the impossible odds they faced. 20 soldiers against 2 exhausted fugitives. She made a decision that would haunt them both. "I will surrender," she said. "If they want information about human settlements, I can misdirect them. You must escape and continue our work." "No." Keth's voice was fierce. "We stay together." Before he could stop her, Zara stepped outside with her hands raised. "I surrender, but I will only speak to your commander." The Valdris soldiers immediately stunned Keth with energy weapons, his unconscious form crumpling to the ground. "Dada!" cried out, but rough hands seized her, dragging her toward a transport ship. Commander Vrex was even more imposing up close, his scarred features speaking of countless battles. His eyes held no mercy as he studied the human female who had somehow corrupted one of his finest warriors. "You will tell us the locations of all remaining human strongholds," he commanded. "Your cooperation will determine how quickly your suffering ends." They transported her to a Valdris command ship in orbit, where she was placed in a sterile interrogation chamber. Hours, they questioned her about human defenses, population centers, resource caches. When she refused to answer or gave false information, they used pain devices that sent agony through her nervous system. But Zara endured, thinking of Keth, of the garden they had created together, of the cure that might save both their peoples. Every scream they tore from her throat was an act of defiance. Meanwhile, Keth had awakened in a detention cell aboard the same ship. His injuries from the stun weapons were severe, but rage gave him strength. When he learned what was being done to Zara, something fundamental broke inside him. That night, using skills learned in years of combat, he escaped his cell and fought his way through the ship's corridors. The Valdris guards were skilled, but they had never faced one of their own kind, fighting with the desperate fury of love. He found Zara barely conscious in the interrogation chamber, her body trembling from the neural torture. When she saw him, tears of relief streamed down her face. "You came for me," she whispered. "Always," he said, gently lifting her broken form. "I will always come for you." But Commander Vrex was waiting in the corridor with a full security team. "Stand down, Keth. The human has no more value to us, but you can still redeem yourself. Kill her now, prove your loyalty to the Valdris Empire, and I will grant you a clean death." Keth held Zara closer, feeling her weak heartbeat against his chest. Around them, energy weapons hummed with deadly charge. It seemed impossible they would survive. "I choose love," Keth said simply. "I choose her." The words were both a declaration and a battle cry. What followed was the most desperate fight of Keth's life. Using Zara's limp form as motivation to become something beyond a mere soldier, he became a force of nature, protecting the woman who had shown him that mercy was stronger than conquest. When the smoke cleared and the last guard fell, Keth carried Zara to the ship's escape pods. As they jettisoned toward the planet's surface, Valdris fighters screaming after them, he held her close and made a promise that would define the rest of their lives. "I will never let anyone hurt you again," he whispered. "We will build something beautiful together, or we will die trying." In the pod's cramped confines, as they hurtled toward an uncertain future, Zara managed to smile through her pain. "Together," she agreed. "Whatever comes, we face it together." The ruins of Colony Nexus Prime stretched endlessly under a crimson sky, broken buildings reaching toward alien stars like skeletal fingers. Zara crept through the debris, her boots crunching on shattered glass and twisted metal. 3 weeks had passed since the Valdris forces conquered the planet, and food grew scarcer each day, her stomach cramped with familiar hunger as she searched. Through what remained of the Botanical Research Center where she once worked, the Valdris had destroyed most everything, but sometimes precious items survived in the deeper ruins. She needed seeds, roots, anything that could sustain life. A low moan echoed from behind a collapsed wall. Zara froze, her heart hammering. Were rare, and most who remained had turned desperate. She clutched her makeshift knife, a shard of metal wrapped with torn fabric. Peering around the rubble, she discovered the source of the sound. A Valdris warrior lay pinned beneath a fallen beam, his gray-blue skin pale with blood loss. The enemy. One of the creatures who had destroyed her world, killed her friends, scattered her people like leaves in a storm. She should leave him to die. But as amber eyes met hers, she saw something unexpected. Not the cold cruelty she had expected from the conquerors, but pain, confusion, and a strange vulnerability that reminded her he was a living being, not just a monster from her nightmares. His breathing was shallow, labored. The beam had crushed his leg, and dark blood pooled beneath him. Without medical attention, he would be dead within hours. Zara backed away, every instinct screaming at her to run. This was madness. The Valdris had shown no mercy to humans. They had burned entire settlements, enslaved survivors, treated her. Species like vermin to be exterminated. The warrior tried to speak, his voice a harsh whisper in his alien tongue. Then, surprisingly, he switched to broken human standard. "Please," he gasped, "help me." Those words stopped her cold. She had never heard a Valdris speak her language before, never heard one say, "please." In all the stories, they were portrayed as emotionless killers who showed no weakness, asked for no quarter. She found herself moving closer, drawn by curiosity and something deeper. Her training as a botanist had taught her to preserve life in all its forms. Even now, with her world in ashes, that instinct remained. "Why should I help you?" she asked, surprised by her own boldness. "Your people destroyed everything I cared about." He closed his eyes, a shudder running through his powerful frame. When he looked at her again, she saw genuine regret. "I know," he whispered. "I am sorry." 2 simple words that changed everything. Zara knelt beside him, her hands shaking as she assessed his injuries. The beam was too heavy for her to move. Alone, but she could treat the bleeding. Maybe ease his pain. She tore strips from her remaining clean clothing and began bandaging his wounds. His skin felt warm beneath her fingers, surprisingly similar to human flesh despite its different hue. He watched her work with those strange amber eyes, saying nothing, but she felt the weight of his gratitude. "What is your name?" she asked. As she worked, "Keth," he replied. "I am called Keth. I am Zara." She finished the bandage and sat back on her heels. "I cannot move this beam alone. You will die here unless your people find you." Keth's expression darkened. "They will not come. I failed in my mission. In Valdris society, failure means abandonment." He paused, studying her face. "Why do you help your enemy?" Zara considered the question. Why was she risking everything for this alien warrior? Perhaps because in his pain she recognized her own. They were both abandoned, both struggling to survive in the ruins of war. "Because," she said finally, "someone has to choose mercy." As the alien sun set and darkness crept across the ruined landscape, Zara made a decision that would change both their lives forever. She would not leave Keth to die alone. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Unlikely alliance era. Returned at dawn with salvaged tools and determination burning in her chest. She had spent the night in a nearby shelter, unable to sleep. Haunted by the image of Keth's amber eyes and the weight of her choice to help him, she found him conscious, but weaker, his breathing shallow. Working in silence, she used a metal pipe as a lever, slowly lifting the beam enough for him to drag himself free. His leg was badly damaged but not broken, and she helped him to a sitting position against the wall. You came back, he said, wonder in his voice. I said I would. Zara offered him water from her precious supply. Can you walk? Keth tested his injured leg gingerly. With support, yes, but where can we go? Both our peoples would kill us now. I know a place, Zara said. But first, you must promise me something. No violence unless absolutely necessary, for survival. Can you agree to that? He studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I give you my word. Supporting each other, they made their way through the ruins toward the old residential district. Zara led him to what appeared to be a collapsed apartment building, but she guided him through a hidden entrance into the basement. Inside, Keth's eyes widened in amazement. The underground space had been converted into a thriving garden. Grow. Lights powered by a small fusion cell illuminated rows of earth plants, tomatoes, beans, wheat, even a small fruit tree. The air smelled of rich soil and growing things, a stark contrast to the death and destruction above. This is impossible, Keth breathed. The bombardment destroyed all plant life. Not all, Zara said with quiet pride. I saved what I could. When the attacks began, this represents the last genetic diversity of Earth flora on this planet. She moved among the plants lovingly, checking leaves and soil moisture. This garden was her life's work, her hope for the future. She had tended it alone for weeks, rationing the produce to survive. Keth watched her with growing understanding. You are a botanist. I was the head researcher at the agricultural center. She plucked a ripe tomato and handed it to him. Eat. You need strength. The simple act of sharing food created an intimacy between them that transcended their species divide. As Keth ate, Zara prepared a small meal of vegetables and grains. They sat together in the warm glow of the grow lights, and for the first time since the war began, neither felt alone. My people are dying, Keth said suddenly. A plague spreads through our ships. Our healers cannot stop it. Zara paused, a forkful of food halfway to her mouth. What kind of plague? That! It attacks our respiratory systems. We weaken, then suffocate slowly. Nearly 20% of our forces are affected. His amber eyes met hers. Your earth plants? Could they hold healing properties for Valdra's physiology? The question hung between them like a bridge across an impossible chasm. Zara realized that this moment would define both their futures. She could lie, claim ignorance, let his people suffer as hers had suffered. It would be justice of a sort. Instead, she found herself saying, yes, some earth plants have universal healing compounds, but I would need to study Valdra's biology. Understand how your systems work. Hope flickered in Keth's eyes. You would do this? Even after what my people did to yours? Zara looked around at her precious garden, then back at the alien warrior who had somehow become her companion. Healing is not about deserving, she said softly. It is about choosing to create life instead of death. That night, as they settled. And to rest among the growing plants, Keth reached out and gently touched Zara's hand. The gesture was tentative, questioning, but she did not pull away. His skin was warm and surprisingly soft, and she felt a flutter of something unexpected in her chest. Thank you, he whispered, for everything. Thank you for giving me a reason to hope again, she replied, in the soft glow of the grow lights, surrounded by the quiet miracle of growing things. Two enemies discovered they were becoming something far more dangerous, allies with the seeds of love taking root in their hearts. The escape pod crashed in the neutral zone, a barren stretch of land between human and Valdra's territories where neither side ventured. Zara's injuries were severe, and for 3 days Keth tended to her with desperate devotion using his warriors. Field medical training to keep her alive when she finally woke. Weak but healing, she found him sitting beside her makeshift bed, his amber eyes red with exhaustion and worry. How long? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. 3 days, I thought. ... double quotes. His voice broke. I thought I had lost you. She reached out weakly and touched his face. You saved me again. We saved each other, he corrected, catching her hand and pressing it to his lips. In the days that followed, as Zara grew stronger, they worked together to create something unprecedented. Using the plant samples she had saved and Keth's knowledge of Valdris biology, they synthesized a treatment for the plague that was decimating his people. The breakthrough came when Zara realized that certain Earth compounds could boost the Valdris immune system's ability to fight the alien pathogen. Working with primitive equipment salvaged from the crash, they created the first doses of what would become known as the Harmony Serum. "We need to test it," Zara said, looking at their small supply of the experimental treatment. Keth rolled up his sleeve without hesitation. "Use me. If it fails, better that I die than innocent members of my crew." "No," Zara said firmly. "We test it together or not at all. We are partners in this." They administered the serum to themselves, then waited anxiously for results. Neither showed adverse effects. And when Keth's scanner confirmed the serum's effectiveness against Valdris pathogens, they knew they had succeeded. But their greatest challenge still lay ahead, convincing two warring species to trust their solution. The first breakthrough came when they managed to contact a neutral trading station. The station's commander, intrigued by their claims and desperate for anything that might end the devastating war, agreed to serve as a mediator. Within weeks, representatives from both species arrived at the station. The meeting was tense, filled with suspicion and old hatred, but Zara and Keth stood before the gathered leaders as living proof that cooperation was possible. "This serum can save lives on both sides," Zara explained to the assembly. "But it requires resources from both our peoples to produce in sufficient quantities." The human representative, her old colleague Torres, studied her with a mixture of admiration and confusion. "Dr. Zara, you disappeared for months. We thought you were dead. Now you return with ... This." He gestured toward Keth. "This is Commander Keth," Zara said proudly. "My partner in every sense of the word. He risked everything to help create this cure." The Valdris delegation was equally skeptical. But when their own tests confirmed the serum's effectiveness, pragmatism began to overcome prejudice. Negotiations continued for days, but eventually an agreement was reached. A joint colony would be established in the neutral zone, where both species could work together to produce the Harmony Serum and explore other forms of cooperation. 6 months later, Zara stood in the center of the colony's main garden, her hands covered in rich soil. As she planted seeds alongside both human and Valdris colonists, the garden had grown beyond her wildest dreams, combining earth plants with native species in ways that benefited both ecosystems. Keth approached from behind, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. Married in a ceremony that honored both their cultures, becoming the colony's first interspecies couple and a symbol of the hope they had helped create. "The first harvest will be ready soon," he murmured in her ear. "And the first generation of children born in peace," Zara replied, one hand moving to rest on her still flat stomach. They had not yet announced the pregnancy, but the child growing within her represented something miraculous, the first human Valdris hybrid. Proof that love could literally create new life even between species that had seemed destined for mutual destruction, as the twin suns set over their growing colony. Painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Zara leaned back against Keth's strong chest and watched their people working together in the gardens. Human and Valdris, side by side, nurturing the plants that would feed both their species. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Everything you gave up for this?" Keth's arms tightened around her. "I gave up nothing," he said firmly. "I gained everything. A home, a purpose, a future, and most importantly, you." She turned in his arms and kissed him deeply, tasting the promise of all their tomorrows. Round them, the garden grew and flourished. A testament to what was possible when two souls chose love over war, hope over despair, and the future over the past. In the distance, they could hear the laughter of children, both human and Valdris, playing together without the burden of their parents' old hatreds. This was their legacy. Not just a cure for a plague, but a cure for the deeper disease of mistrust and fear that had divided their peoples. The last garden had become the first garden of a new world, and love had made it possible.